Every sailor who ever lived knew one thing: the ocean has a bottom. They just didn't know what lived there. For thousands of years, men climbed into wooden boats, pushed out past the coastline, and entered a world that had no roads, no walls, and no rules. A world that swallowed ships whole and gave nothing back. And in that world, across every ocean, on every continent, sailors came home with the same look in their eyes. Something was out there. Not one civilization, not one culture, not one century. All of them, everywhere, for thousands of years. These sea creatures that sailors didn't just fear, they swore on their lives they were real. The Aspidochelone, the island that ate ships. Imagine you've been at sea for 3 weeks. No land, no fresh water, nothing but open ocean in every direction. Then, on the horizon, an island, trees, flat ground, a place to rest, cook, sleep somewhere that doesn't move. Your crew anchors the ship, everyone climbs off, someone builds a fire, and then the island moves. The Aspidochelone is a legendary sea creature from ancient Greek Christian literature, described as a colossal whale or turtle that floats motionless with its back protruding above the water, mimicking a verdant island to lure unsuspecting sailors. In the legend found in most texts, sailors believed the creature to be an island, disembarked onto it, and kindled a fire to prepare their food. Over time, the creature submerged into the depths to cool itself, inadvertently pulling the ship down and drowning the sailors. This wasn't some fringe legend whispered by one tribe. The mythical sea monster was mentioned everywhere in the Latin world, but also in other cultures. In Irish folklore, a giant fish appears in the story of Saint Brendan. The monster, called the Jasconius, breached the boat of Brendan because he also mistook it for an island. In the mythology of Greenland, the same monster was called the Umibozu, described the same way. The beast was said to tip sailors into freezing waters, causing their deaths. In Middle Eastern legends, it appears as the Zaratan, mentioned in the first voyage of Sinbad the Sailor in the Tales of the 1001 Nights. Every ocean, every culture, the same creature, an island that waited. The Hafgufa, the sea mist that swallowed fleets. The Norse were not afraid of the ocean. These were people who crossed the North Atlantic in open wooden boats before most civilizations figured out how to navigate a river. Fear was not in their vocabulary, and yet the Hafgufa kept them up at night. A detailed account of the Hafgufa, which translates to sea mist, appears in a 13th century manuscript called the Konungs Skugga, the King's Mirror, written for Norwegian King Håkon Håkonarson. In medieval accounts, the thing that all the texts stress is the massive size of the Hafgufa. In many texts, it is actually mistaken for an island. It sits still in the water and fish jump into its mouth. The Norse sagas describe the Hafgufa as a massive creature that could swallow whole ships. It was said to emit a sort of sweet and intoxicating smell that would lure poor sailors toward it. Here's what makes this one genuinely unsettling. In 2023, Australian scientists published research suggesting the Hafgufa was probably based on a real whale, one using a feeding strategy where it floats motionless with its mouth open, releasing a scent that draws fish inside. Medieval mariners probably knew that the Hafgufa was a type of whale and not a fantastical sea monster. Norse people were huge seafarers with a very high level of knowledge concerning the tides, the currents, the wave patterns, as well as the fish. They knew what it was, and they were still terrified of it. The Akkorokamui, the red god that could speak. In Uchiura Bay, off the coast of Hokkaido, Japan, fishermen didn't just fear this creature, they prayed to it. Akkorokamui, meaning many-armed god or tentacle-holding god, is a colossal octopus-like sea deity revered and feared in the traditional folklore of the Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido, Japan. This massive creature is described as over 120 yards in length with a bright red body, large staring eyes, and numerous tentacles, believed to dwell in the depths of Uchiura Bay. But this wasn't just mythology passed down around a fire. There are written eyewitness accounts. In the 19th century, an English missionary named John Batchelor lived among the Ainu people and documented a first-hand report. 3 fishermen went out to catch swordfish. All at once, a great sea monster with large, staring eyes appeared in front of them and proceeded to attack the boat. A desperate fight ensued. The monster was round in shape and emitted a dark fluid and noxious odor. The three men fled in dismay, not so much for fear, they said, but on account of the dreadful smell. However that may have been, they were so scared that the next morning, all three refused to get up and eat. They were lying in their beds, pale and trembling. Three grown men, fishermen who worked the ocean daily, lying in their beds, unable to eat. Offerings and prayers were made to avoid its wrath and gain favor for safe fishing journeys. Because to the Ainu, the Akkorokamui wasn't a monster to be killed, it was a god to be appeased. The Umibozu, the shadow that rose from calm water. Every sailor feared a storm. The Umibozu appeared when the sea was completely calm. One of the earliest references to this creature comes from Umi Monogatari, a collection of tales from the 17th century. The Umibozu assumed the role of a vengeful spirit or demon, dwelling beneath the waves and emerging to wreak havoc on unsuspecting sailors and their vessels. The Umibozu appears as a giant, shadowy monk with a bald, rounded head, often emerging suddenly from the depths during stormy nights or rough seas. Legends suggest respecting or offering sake to the creature could prevent disaster at sea. Japanese sailors didn't just tell stories about it. They built entire rituals around avoiding it. In Mie Prefecture, it was thought that the end of the month was the time for Umibozu, and ships were prohibited from launching at that time. One sailor broke that ban. He soon encountered a Umibozu who approached him and asked, "Am I terrifying?" The sailor replied, "I find nothing as terrifying as trying to make my way in this world." At which the Umibozu suddenly vanished. The creature asked if it was scary. That detail alone, a monster curious about its own reputation, is more disturbing than anything a simple sea beast could do. The Lusca, the thing living in the blue holes. Off the coast of Andros Island in the Bahamas, there are places in the ocean called blue holes, underwater sinkholes, some of them hundreds of feet deep, dark, cold, and completely unexplored. Things go into them, they don't come back out. Local lore attributes unexplained disappearances, skeletal remains, and wreckage scattered around these sites to the Lusca's attacks, often preceded by ominous bubbles rising from the depths or sudden color changes in the water. Traditional folklore describes the Lusca as half shark, half octopus, a description borne out by certain sightings, including one eyewitness account describing the Lusca as a tentacled animal with a pointed head like that of a mako shark. And these weren't just local fishermen. Shortly before his retirement, an American sailor named Frank Hurricane Clark mentioned, in a newspaper interview, an observation of a giant octopus of unknown size, 500 miles east of the Bahamas. After a researcher published an article describing the Lusca, a returned U.S. Navy officer named John C. Martin wrote to report a sighting he had made off the coast of Florida in March or April 1941. A Navy officer filing a formal report about the Lusca. The blue holes of Andros have never been fully explored. Marine biologists still don't know everything living inside them. Whatever the Lusca is, it may still be down there. The Cetus, the monster. Ancient civilizations built myths around. Most people know Perseus saved Andromeda from a sea monster. What most people don't know is that the Greeks took that monster seriously enough to map it in the stars. The Cetus, a massive sea creature from ancient Greek and Roman maritime tradition, wasn't just a story. It was a warning passed down by sailors who had seen something enormous in the Mediterranean and couldn't explain it. Ancient writers described it as longer than a warship, with a neck so wide 3 men couldn't wrap their arms around it, scales that turned Roman spears, and a smell so powerful it killed sailors before it even reached their vessel. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder recorded an account from the coast of Joppa where locals claimed a Cetus had washed ashore. He described bones over 40 feet long, ribs taller than Indian elephants. He wrote it down as fact, not legend, because to the sailors of the ancient Mediterranean, there was no difference. Modern science has confirmed giant squid exist. Whale sharks grow to the length of a school bus. Oarfish, creatures that look exactly like sea serpents, have been photographed alive at depths of over 3,000 feet. The ocean covers 71% of this planet. We have explored less than 20% of it, which means that right now, in the darkness below the surface, there are creatures alive that no human has ever seen.
The sailors weren't crazy. They were just the first ones to look.